Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Got a great show today, folks. And we're going to go down a different road today. I'm really excited. We're going to talk about, for the most part, paranormal investigation and how we can change the way we look at paranormal investigation today with my guest, Dr. Peter Sacco. Let me tell you a little bit about him. We'll jump right into it today. We got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of good ground to cover today. Dr. Peter Sacco is the author of 30-plus books, fiction and nonfiction, published on 4 continents. He's a resident expert and a regular of Top 50 USA radio and TV markets, including Fox, CBS, ABC, ESPN, Coast to Coast AM, iHeart, and over 100 other major radio and TV networks. Peter is an award-winning director, writer, cinematographer, executive producer on 7 continents. He is also the author of more than 800 articles, self-help and fiction, appearing in major news media worldwide. Peter's also a regular guest at Canadian and American Comic-Cons and has also appeared in film and TV shows. He is the former host of the hit radio series Matters of the Mind and currently hosts Historical Niagara, the award-winning new TV series. Peter has been featured on ABC, CBS, Fox, Coast to Coast, and iHeart. He's been on major radio shows in 32 U.S. states and 4 Canadian provinces, and radio shows in Europe, China, South America, and Australia. Let's bring him in for the first time to Darkness Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Dr. Peter Sacco. Dr. Sacco, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tim. As you're reading all this stuff, I'm sitting there thinking, who the hell are you talking about? I didn't even realize I did all that stuff. And it's funny because I heard you say 7 continents. And I remember a while back somebody bringing that up. And they said, you've been to the Antarctica? Like the 7th continent? And it was no. There was actually a film festival that represented the Antarctica. And it was funny because my publicist said, okay, you got free right now. You can say 7 continents.
There you go.
Go for it.
Yeah.
But I guess like Admiral, that's as closer than Admiral Byrd ever got, that I'm going to get there, not like Byrd when he got there in the 1940s.
Hey, I say count it. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, why not? You might as well do that. I am impressed, though. With every guest, I do a little bit of milling around and try to figure out a little bit about them and do my little research, and that I have with you, and I am quite impressed. It's not only do you have the criminal psychology degree, and you are a doctor, and teach other people how to do their police work, but you've also delved deep into the paranormal, and so you've got this foot in both worlds, which is to me astounding and amazing. So you can weigh in on both, and we can do that today here. And you've been on many different cases where, and we should explain to people that you've labeled yourself as not only a skeptic, but you said you have a foot in the cynic world as well.
Yeah, you know what? Having done the Paranormal Profilers for the years that we've done it, because we actually did it years ago, but we had to stop because of COVID. And finally, I was able to clean up the series, edit it, and get it onto Paraflix, which they're streaming it through a bunch of different streaming networks, which is awesome. And I just found out yesterday it's the #1 paranormal show after 6 episodes. I'm sitting there thinking, I was telling my wife, and she goes, "Wow!" And I'm like, whoever would have thought? And doing that show, Tim, that's where I could say this, even a greater cynic and skeptic came out of me by going to fraudulent sorts of situations and really seeing it and going, okay, like this is, it's no different from when I was training coppers or people that wanted to become cops, that, we look at feigning. In the world of psychology, feigning, faking, making something up, either to avoid responsibility, to get a personal gain or greed out of it, or to manipulate. And you see a lot of narcissistic sociopaths and psychopaths do that. And it really is, several of my, I would say, closest friends and associates are cops. And over the years, I know cops are some of the most cynical, skeptical people on this earth because they deal, whether you want to hear it or not, with fabricators, liars, and deceivers most of their careers, especially in that. So then when you go into the paranormal aspect of it, and me being around cops for so long, and my ex, by the way, years ago, she's awesome. We're friends to this day. She's a federal cop.
Really?
And I remember, and I thought I had a little bit of skepticism as a psychologist, but I'm sitting there thinking, okay, got a federal cop. She's really molding me into becoming the ultimate cynic. And looking at things and going, is that what, do you really, really believe what you're seeing right now? And it's like, And I think that's where it comes off. That's where we put the glasses on, so to speak, and go, am I really seeing what I'm seeing and hearing what I'm seeing? Sure, in your neck of the woods, Tim, you heard, believe only half of what you hear and even less of what you see.
Right. Yep.
And I think this translates into the paranormal world even more so.
Well, let me ask you this, Pete. Here's where I think a lot of paranormal investigators, especially, let's say, weekend warriors, because I'm going to say the number that listen to the show of weekend warriors is probably 60-40, right? As far as who's listening to the show are weekend warriors, right? People who go out and investigate for fun, all right? Kind of as a hobby. When they get out there to a site, let's say they go to Waverly Hills, or they're going somewhere where they've paid money to go and investigate, they, of course, are going for a thrill, or they're going to get confirmation that there's something out there, right? So they get to a site and they get that first sensation, right? Whether it be a tug on clothing, or they get a tug on the hair, they get something touching them, or they get, something that they think they see moving in the distance, and there's that rush of adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
So automatically it's, I saw something, I feel something, right? What do you do in that situation when you're new to the field and you want to jump at it? You want to say, I got it, right? It's like when you catch your first fish, and you want to jump for joy, but it might just be, a weed instead of a fish. How do you suppress that feeling and jump into a skeptical mindset and just say to yourself, okay, wait a minute, let's take a look around and make sure that what I saw was actually something.
That's interesting. I like the analogy you use of the fish. Florida is like my second home, and it's been like that since the 80s, since I started going down there after my parents had taken me as a kid. And it's kind of funny because I love fishing, especially I went out in the glades fishing. And I remember even in the irrigation system behind the condos I was staying at, I would go by the bank and fish or whatever. And I was told, if you're pulling something that's big and black into the boat, that is not a eel. It is a cottonmouth.
Oh.
So be careful about tugging this thing into the boat, because once it's in there with you, good luck with that thing if it decides it really loves you and it wants to get up close and personal with you and start fighting you. So I thought, okay, point taken. As much as I love eel sushi, no, I'm not going to go that route.
No.
And that's the whole thing. It's be careful of what you ask for and what you go poking around, because doing this. So I've got a very talented team that I've worked with. I've had repeatedly, I don't know if you're familiar with Jack Kenna. Jack has the Spirits of New England. So he's been on Haunted Case Files, Haunted Hospitals, Paranormal Witness, Paranormal Survivor. Jack's been everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because Jack came down after doing a shoot at one of the War of 1812 site. It wasn't Gettysburg, it was the other one, where 2 weeks earlier, Jack was there and he was being tormented there. And so then they were investigating my property, because my backyard is literally in the War of 1812, this whole area. And when I bought this house, people had said, the previous owner says, oh yeah, it's haunted. Like, we see stuff in here. There's a lot of really funky stuff that was on here. And so Jack's out in the back there with Michelle Desrochers. She's Canada's Most Haunted, and Michelle's all over as well, too. She's phenomenal. And they're out there with a novelist. They're out there with a small spirit box, and they're communicating. All of us, and I'm sitting there thinking, if they're pulling this stuff onto my property and they leave after, does Pete get stuck here with this? And what happened that day was actually amusing, because this thing starts F-bombing on this and calling Jack every name in the book. And then Jack is like, whoa, Pete, you got a live one on your property. And so then Jack's face turns white as a ghost, pun intended. He realizes that this thing that was harassing him around my property that followed him from Pennsylvania 2 weeks prior. It came with him. So it was almost like going to a restaurant and bringing your own steak and asking them to cook it. They never found ghosts on my property or spirits. Jack brought his own. So I guess in some ways, Jack actually fulfilled something. But in that same token, we did a shoot not too long after, Tim, which was a bizarre one. They got the idea of, let's use a spirit box and let's use Pete's dining room, where I'm sitting right now, and see if we can contact greys, also known as aliens. So there's Jack, there's Michelle, and Wayne Mellows, who's Michelle's partner, and he's also a really talented horror author. They started communicating with something that's presenting them as an alien. And I'm thinking, wow. And then this thing start sounding threatening, and then Wayne, I can see the look, Wayne is transcribing, and he's like, guys, I think we should stop this. I think we're pushing it too far. And so they finally stopped. And normally, if Michelle and Wayne have done a spirit box session, Tim, they always want to end kind of on a good note and let it go that way.
Yeah. This
thing really overall, in my humble opinion, as I was sitting across the room, just watching it as the director and the host of the show, thinking, okay, at that time, I'm single, yet I met my now wife few months later. I've got to go to bed alone in this house. They're all leaving my house. And so then the thought hit me after I locked the front door. I'm sitting there thinking, gee, I wonder who potentially could get an anal probe tonight. Who's coming to Pete's house tonight? While he's sleeping, I better go get my old hockey equipment on and put my hockey, the Keffler pants on so nothing's getting in. But I remember not sleeping that night, sitting there thinking, are you kidding? And so then for reassurance sake, the next morning, Wayne messages me as they're driving from my neck of the woods here in St. David's, which is in Niagara-on-the-Lake, back to Niagara Falls. Wayne said, and he's driving a Toyota Tundra, a pickup truck that's jacked up off the ground. Something, Tim, jumped on two legs over the truck across the road as they were going home.
Oh, no.
That looked like a giant wolf. So I didn't see. It would be cool to see, but what I really wanted to hang out, if it really was real, no. But they did see it. They couldn't say, for example, but because Michelle has talked to do a lot of stuff with cryptids and that stuff, and she says, yeah, Peter, there's these wolf men, these dog men. Yep. That are around or whatever. We did investigate a case that's in this series, our series, at a ranch where a guy's horse was literally disemboweled during the night. And you can see the claw marks up. And people have reported seeing this, what looks like a giant wolf, like on two legs.
So you have had dog men in that area before.
That's what the fellow who owned the ranch, people have told him repeatedly, and this is out in Port Robinson, Canada, that has happened. Now, I'll give you a really interesting tie into this. So Michelle says, Peter, I've got an individual that's up north that has a really bizarre case, and they had something chased her son into they're kind of out in the sticks. It's like a cabin house. I don't know if they stay there full time. But whatever it was chased him. The son in his 20s saw this thing, and he bolted into the house. They locked the door or whatever. And at one point, they could hear the claws at the top of the door and the snout sniffing at the top of the door. So we're talking at least, 6.5 feet or higher up. Mm-hmm. And here's the fun part with this. I then eventually get the tie-in. That same individual was connected 7-8 hours hours away to this ranch that we were filming at Port Robinson that had this, what this guy claimed and other people claimed to have seen, this thing on two legs. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So then we could go into the whole, is it mass hysteria if we want to go into the psychological side? Is it the power of suggestion? Is this what they're seeing? I didn't see it, so I can't comment one way or another.
You know, although I know too many people who are in the cryptid field who have heard it, not necessarily seen it, but heard it and seen what they think is Dogman through infrared goggles, through FLIR goggles, and they swear by it. They swear that thing is real. I
find it intriguing. So yeah. I stopped teaching a course. It had to be about 2004-ish. And I created a course in 1996 called Understanding the Paranormal. Mm-hmm. And it was a fun course I wanted to do at the college, because at the time the X-Files was really kicking off and becoming popular. And I wanted to run a psychology course that would explain a lot of the phenomenon that people would witness or see or whatever. And my class, it was talked about in a newspaper, and the course was waitlisted actually within days. And I remember going through all of this sort of these, whatever you want to call them, the monsters and the tales of the bizarre, or what people were truly seeing or what they thought they had seen. Mm-hmm. And at that time, 96, there wasn't a lot of this equipment that we have today. And while doing the profilers, it's interesting. Wayne Mellows, who's a regular on the show, says, because he lives in an old mansion that was a B&B for a while, and now it's just his house that's haunted. And Wayne said, what has really changed is when you pick up your phone and you take selfies, because spirits would traditionally understand the concept of a camera and that the lens shoots forward, but they don't understand the concept if they're taking a selfie. And I saw what he was seeing in his house, but he was photographing it, Tim, and it was bizarre. He has these things sitting behind him. And these are not like, okay, I'm looking at, what do you want to call it, pareidolia? If we want to look at shapes, bizarre things going together, if they're lens flares, if it's mist, moist, fog, this, that effect. No, this is real. You can see the faces plain as day. So then to go forward with what you're talking about, all of a sudden, over the last 3 years, trail cams have become amazing.
Yeah.
And they're out there.
Yeah.
And these things, if they really do exist, these cryptids and that, they don't have no idea what those are.
Very true. Interestingly enough, okay, so here at my own house, I have just a simple camera set up right near a feed dish, because I have different wild animals that I feed. I know it's probably not a good thing, people may think, but I have like squirrels and birds and chipmunks that I feed, and I tame wild chipmunks. My listeners know this. I shouldn't say I tame them, but I have tame wild chipmunks that respond to me, in other words. And I've named them and stuff, and we have a nice little relationship. I'll tell you about it later. So I have this camera that's set up, and actually last night I'm sitting, and I made a joke to somebody. I said, and I could actually show you the video because I think it's hysterical. In front of the one camera outside in front of the feed dish, I got a notice from the camera, and the camera is AI enabled. So it will give you a notice and tell you what it is that's in front of the camera. Now, it commonly makes mistakes. Like, it'll say the big squirrel I have out front that's eaten way too much is a black cat with a leash on, which I think is funny. But last night there was something dancing in front of the camera that looked like an orb, right? Now, most people that aren't paranormally trained would look at that thing and think it was grandma that was dancing in front of the camera. But I looked at it and I went, oh, it's a moth. Yeah. I mean, you could tell by the flight pattern, right? Because it's just because when the camera goes on at night, it emits a light. So of course a moth is going to stay there, right? And it's going to go, oh, a light, right? It's just going to dance in front of that camera. So that's what it did. And I went, oh gosh, it's a never ending loop, right? Of just that moth.
And that's I'm glad you bring that up, because that now becomes the secondary issue then with these cameras, because you're looking at it, and it really is, it can be distorted in some respect. You sometimes you're not going to get the details, and also the ratios. Things are off, like in terms of the size of stuff, and that's an interesting phenomenon. I'm seeing more and more videos on these rakes, or whatever they're being called. So if you're looking at those things, when I first saw them, I just thought, okay, that's got to be somebody dressed up doing something like that. There was pranksters. And I watched it on one of I watched the History Channel. The proof is out there. I think that's it. I was interested because I was watching it. I got to know Jeff Mudgett from American Ripper. Jeff's a friend of mine. Yep. And so I watched it. I watched what's on there, and I find it interesting. And I'm seeing more folks that are really into this. The more intriguing part of it are individuals that are hunters that are actually cops that have these, and cops are the most cynical, skeptical people oftentimes, where they won't say, well, I'm feeling intuitive here. No, Sacco, it's a gut instinct. I used to get in arguments with them a couple times in a surveillance van where the 6'3" cop kept going, Sacco, it's not intuitive. It's not a feeling, so to speak, or whatever. It's a gut feeling. So I said, well, what the hell do you have? Jalapenos with hot chilies? Is that what that feeling is? Oh, no, you're just being smart with me. So I would ask the cops, well, what is that feeling? Where is that coming from?
Yeah.
And they need to see stuff to believe it. And so when they're the ones with the trail cams, because some of them are hunters, showing this stuff, they're blown away by it, because they're going, well, that doesn't walk like a duck, quack like a duck. That ain't a duck. Meaning that ain't a person doing that stuff, especially contorting. How are you able to contort unless you're getting folks from Cirque du Soleil coming out there to dress as these rakes and these other sorts of cryptids? What is it? Tim, we look at this. What are these things, and why all of a sudden we're getting more and more of these occurrences? And the argument could be made, well, it's a phenomenon. People start to see them. People start to do these movies on this kind of stuff, like Slender Man and all this stuff. And it's like the same sort of fallout of, War of the Worlds. And then when people started seeing UFOs, it was a progression that the UFO type that they saw always correspond and match to what was currently playing in the theater. And those types of UFOs, it was always very similar to that. And so this is now the new argument. Well, they're just seeing it based on these movies. But no, I don't believe so. I believe what it really is the fact that these trail cams are available. We have technology that is off of the charts right now, that you can trap stuff without it even knowing. If it really exists, that is, it has no idea, because it doesn't understand that technology. Because let's be realistic, Tim, I don't understand a lot of this technology.
Yeah, it's developing so quickly and coming at you so fast that the minute you start to understand what you've got in your hand, they're developing new stuff. And so you've got to learn something all over again. I'll just show you before we go to break here, Pete. Here's the video right here. And you can see this thing dancing around.
Yeah.
And you see how you could misunderstand that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks like an orb, right?
Yep, somebody would look at the Tinkerbell.
Yeah, it looks like Tinkerbell flying around, but that's a moth. And most people wouldn't, they'd freak out and think, well, what is that flying around there?
Exactly. And if you had an individual, Tim, that had went to see, say, a psychic or whatever, and the person says, you're going to get a sign, somebody's going to come and visit you.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they see that out there, there's all the fixings for a really good belief system that's starting.
Yeah. And all that is just simply a moth that's been caught up in the light, and the camera system can't focus because it's too close. And
got it, 100%.
Yeah, and that's all it is. But there's nothing to get excited about. So It's
no, nothing to phone home about.
Right. Nothing to call a psychic or an exorcist over, that's for sure. My guest is Dr. Peter Andrew Sacco, and we've got links for him in the description of our program here, so you can not only catch him on Paraflix and add to those ratings, by the way. And we've got links to his website and much, much more, so you can catch up with Dr. Sacco everywhere he's at to get some of his books as well, because he's got some great books out there. When we come back, we're going to dig more into how you can add some criminal psychology techniques to your paranormal investigation. I know there's a lot of investigators out there that are more than serious about this and want to figure out new ways to become more skeptical about what they're doing and ways to sharpen up their game, so to speak. So when we do that, we'll try to get a few tips from Dr. Sacco as to how they can do that. So we'll do that next. But first, I want to tell you about the specials over at Jelly Bean and Julia's this week. For today, happy hour, 25% off all appetizers. That excludes the appetizer sampler. You also get half price off single pour well drinks, half price off Mick Golden Light and Coors Light taps, and half price off domestic cans and bottles. Then tomorrow, Friday, the smoked prime rib dinner every Friday night over there. And let me tell you, folks, it is going to be one of the top 5 meals you have in this lifetime. I kid you not. Even the au jus is smoked in that walk-in smoker that Corey has over there at Jelly Bean and Julia's. You got not only the 12 and 16 ounce cuts that you can choose from, you also have you've got the tequila berry salad, that sweet and tangy dressing with the bacon bits. You also get a Boston baked potato with that, and you get the Texas toast. That's all in one meal. They start serving at 4:30 over there at Jelly Bean and Julia's. Get there early, folks, because it will be gone. I'll tell you that. Get there early. They serve until it's gone. So again, smoked prime rib dinner every Friday night. You can't beat it. Of course, live entertainment on Saturday. Sunday, breakfast only at Jelly Bean and Julia's is just as good as every other meal over there. You get chicken and waffles, much, much more. You get brisket and the hash, and oh my gosh, their brisket is so good. Let me tell you. You get the wings over there as well every night. Their wings, Corey is the wing king, by the way, and Corey does the wings so good over there. They have both boneless and regular wings over there. You got to try Jelly Bean and Julia's. They also do catering as well. So much more. JellyBeanandJulia's.com. Go check out the website. There's a link in the description of this program. JellyBeanandJulia's.com. Check them out. On Coon Rapids Boulevard in Coon Rapids, JellyBeanandJulia's.com. All right, when we come back, folks, more with Dr. Peter Sacco. We'll talk about criminal investigation and how we can take some of those techniques and fold them into our paranormal investigation. It's coming up next, right here on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is Dr. Peter Sacco, and we are talking today about many different things, but also including paranormal investigation and criminal psychology, how we can fold in those criminal psychology or criminal investigation techniques into our paranormal investigation. And see if we can't come up with a better way of investigating the paranormal, which is kind of an intriguing thought process, I guess we could say. Pete, let me ask you this as we start off this second segment. What's the main thing you think we're doing wrong when we go into an investigation?
Okay. I think, first of all, it depends on the context of the investigation and who's doing it. The hardest thing, I think, to look at this is, are you going in there with expectation? I think that's a scary way of doing business, where we're doing an investigation based on a level of expectation, because it's almost like hypnosis. When I've done hypnosis with clients in the past or whomever, hypnosis only works because for most individuals that are hypnotizable is because it's based on the power of expectation, that they expect to be hypnotized or they think that they can be hypnotized. Whereas an individual says, yeah, I can't be hypnotized. And I'll agree with them 100%. I know when I was doing my doctorate, I was trained by Alan Krasner. He was one of the leading hypnotherapists in the world, amazing doctor of it. And he couldn't get me to go under until towards the end of my training, because I fought it. I didn't want it because I just felt like I'm going to be out of control here or lacking control, so I could fight it. So I didn't expect that I could be hypnotized, therefore it didn't happen. Ironically, he wound up tricking me that he did get me, and I think he got me because part of it was I was tired and I let my guard down, so to speak. Now, this is the same thing to him going into an investigation. People who expect to see something, I believe, will see something or experience it. And there's those that don't expect to see anything that are on the other side of the continuum. They're the polarized opposite, that you could show them something and they still won't accept it. So in both of these situations, I think when we're trying to profile whatever it is you want, a haunted site, let's say, or an apparition, or even, a demonic possession, so to speak. If it's going to be, it's got to be based on you're going in there objectively and leaving all subjectivity on the sidelines. Just like in my field. It wasn't until 3 years ago I saw an individual for the first time in my life that actually had multiple personality disorder. That, that now it's dissociative, we're looking at dissociative identity disorder. It's like the whole bunch of multiple personalities. Mm-hmm. And when I first started out in the mid-90s in this field as a psychologist, I remember coming across professionals they were seeing MPDs all over the place. They had like tons of clients that had multiple personality disorder. And it is so rare, to be honest. But yet, power of expectation. If that's how you want to treat a client or a patient, you start to treat them accordingly. Just like individuals I've seen in my field, they think all people are depressed. Therefore, when they start treating somebody with a problem, instead of realizing that they're sad, they're going through a grief or a loss, they were handing out Prozac, Zoloft, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, different types of drugs, like they were Pez candies, where this was just a situational sadness or depression that wasn't clinically, chemically induced or whatever, so to speak. But it's expectation. And we see this in any sort of field where it comes in with the placebo effect. If we think something, it's more likely to happen the way we want it to happen, which is the power of suggestion, self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, so if we're profiling a case, you have to go in there cold turkey, where basically you're going in there pretending that you don't know anything that's really happened there other than what the eyewitness or the historian has told you about this place. And this is what we do in our show. So generally speaking, I will sit down with the owner of a place or the historian. They'll tell me the story, but I will fail purposefully, neglectfully to tell the psychic mediums, the paranormal investigators. So they're going in cold turkey. Okay. So they don't know what they're looking for. So I know what is there. The owner knows what's there, unless it is a really famous place. But we've gone in a few. We have. I'm just trying to think. They're not really on the shows. We've gone and done them. I have a bunch of stuff sitting on mothballs that we filmed and all that stuff. And I don't know if it's ever going to see the light of day on a network or whatever. Some of its stuff was just too bizarre, and there was not good things that happened there, because there really was, I believe, in one case, a demon. And it was a very bad situation, and that I didn't like. I didn't enjoy it. I told the team, if stuff like this happens, I'm out of this. I don't want any part of that. I'm a very strong Christian believer. I definitely give my life comes for Christ. That's who I serve. And I've been warned not to play in that field, and I don't. That's those folks that are the, quote unquote, the specialists in it. They go and do that, and I just put the show together and report on it. And try to be the objective self based on psychology. When we're looking at cases like that, the other things that we try to do in creating profiles is the psychic mediums do not talk with the investigators either. And if we have two sets of psychic mediums, they're not doing it together. And we don't tell them where they're going until an hour before. So they can't go do research, dig it up. And the places that we do go to, which is interesting, the funny part is, Tim, I know what they could potentially find, and in some cases, they found something altogether different. And then the owner didn't even tell me that in advance. And in one case, my one psychic medium, it was her first gig on the show. She saw. I don't want to say she could see it. I couldn't see it. I did a walkthrough with her onto the third floor of this old 150-year-old mansion, I think it was, or at least 120 years old. And she saw in a closet a woman that had committed suicide by hanging herself. And I thought, okay. And I said, please don't go tell the owner this, because I'm sitting there thinking the owner never told me that. And I don't need you to go and start stirring a pot and thinking, oh my gosh, the owner's got something else to worry about in here, especially when this is, a bed and breakfast. So we go down, meet with the owner in the giant sitting area. And, the owner says, lay it on me. What did you find or whatever? And I remember Susan Carter, that's the psychic medium, going, well, we saw this and this. And, oh, yeah, I saw somebody hanging in a closet dead. And I'm just thinking in my inside voice, you didn't just do that, please. And then part of it, too, is I'm also thinking, is this individual psychic medium going to lose their credibility, too, by not picking the stuff that's really been going on and then picking up other stuff? And I remember, Jim, seeing the owner of this B&B, or jaw drop, going, oh my gosh, how the hell did you know that? She goes, when we bought this place, because she turned it into a B&B, she was one of Canada's leading designers on the W Network. And she said it was disclosed to us privately that there was a suicide, a death in this house, something like 90 or 100 years ago. And she goes, we haven't told anybody. And so there it is. She picked that out of left field. And so that's the part that is the objectivity of it. It defies gossiping or triggering expectation, and then they going looking for stuff that they already know, and then they can create it like through the power of expectation. And let's be realistic, if a person's a psychic medium, they're seeing stuff, but we're not the psychic medium, so to speak. How do I know that they're telling the truth? Or how do I know that they're really seeing this, or they're just not recapitulating the story that's already been told to them?
Right.
So that's another way that we profile it, is they're going in cold. They have to. That's the only way that can possibly be done. So then when we pull it together, the ultimate profile is you take the owner's firsthand account, or the historian, that the psychic mediums don't know, that the ghost box session people don't know, and that the paranormal investigators don't know. So we got three different ways of going in this. And then we compare notes at the end to look at the profile and say, okay, does any of what they found match with what the original reason was that they were brought into the case? And it happens a fair bit. We were talking before, because in the last episode on paranormal and policing, I had a friend of mine, my acquaintance, Steve DeChevy from the Dead Files. Mm-hmm. And Steve and I have talked about this before. Steve was a cop in New York before, he retired and joined the Dead Files. But I remember we were talking about one case where he was adamant that he saw it a certain way, and I think Amy saw it a different way. But they know kind of the upfront what they're kind of, Steve's hearing the story, but then Amy's going off in her way of doing it, and then they come and compare notes at the end. And we do something similar, but we have different levels of going in where on the Dead Files, you know, they have the psychic medium, which we have, but then we also have a ghost box or spirit box, Tesla box, however you want to call it. And then we also have those that are using obelisks, K2 meters, temperature imaging, different infrared imaging, you name it, they've used it. They've used everything. And one thing we shot, they used Kirlian photography, which was interesting because they actually picked up a phantom, what looks like a face in a window, which is absolutely disturbing.
Yeah.
And that's how we look at it. We look at it from different areas. And I know, like I said, I know they do that on Dead Files and other shows. They do some stuff like that. But whereas we've put it all together. And then I guess in some ways as a psychologist, I look at the legitimacy of, is this real? Like, is everything that has been found, is it real? But at the end of the day, we don't judge. People can take and walk away with what they want. I'm not there to be the the skeptical, cynic naysayer that says, no, this was all just made up in your head or whatever, because what we believe is, I believe there are facts, and facts are always truthful. And then I believe there are truths, but truths are not always factual. Truths are rather a person's interpretation of an event that can become their truth, but it still doesn't make it a fact.
So if you go to a location and someone's truth is that it's haunted, and you've got your investigators and psychics that go out there and back up their truth that it's haunted, and they ask you for help, what's your action after that? What action do you take?
We don't do that. And I know some of the shows, they have a recommendation, like we don't go and film that kind of stuff. But in several of the instances, we also have to look at the places we're going to. A lot of these are historical places where nobody's living there, like they're forts, old forts from 1812. The Buffalo Transit Terminal, which is a phenomenal building in Western New York. Mm-hmm. It's derelict for all intents and purposes, but they hold functions and they're still down in the giant, whatever you call it, the lobby down there. It's massive, where they have paracons and they have other events. So it's not like you would need, quote unquote, psychic mediums or whomever, exorcists to come in there and get these things out unless they're being bothersome. However, in a couple of the cases, there was one case where the psychic mediums did move on. And once again, this is a public building that's used for different events, where they came across a couple that they believed, I believe the wife was still there haunting the place from the 1800s. And I believe the husband had been executed or was killed on the site, the area, before this place had the building built. And we did a second follow-up episode there that never has gone to air, so to speak. I don't know if that we will do that because it wasn't really long enough. But they moved this person on into the light. That's what they told me they did. So you had two psychic mediums there, and Michelle DeRoche was there and Susan Carter, and they moved whatever was there forward because this thing was staying there. And then there was another instance where they made recommendations. This is what you needed to do. And I think they mentioned it on camera that you need to, sage your place, possibly bring in a minister, get this place blessed, and do that. And they did that.
Okay. I find it fascinating. What you can do when it comes to television, what you can do as a private investigator, and how far you should go, right? Whether you're going to someone's home or whether you're going to just a private location, whether you're going to a historic location. I mean, obviously with a historic location, you're not touching anything. It's part of the ambiance, I guess, right? But if it's a private location, if it's someone's home, and they tell you, well, you know what, we're done with it. We don't want anything to do with this thing. At that point, You mentioned you had a case, and this keeps ringing in my head. You had a case with a demon, and I guess at that point, as far as you're concerned and your crew, do you just pick up at that point and say we're done with this case and we scrap it, or what do you do?
Okay, so we were actually filming at an old fort.
Mm-hmm.
We went out there and we left the fort, and it was after midnight. And there's a house, I'm not going to name it, but it has had a history where the individual, the family moved out of there. There's mixed versions of it, whether it was the 1960s or the 70s. They just picked up and left in the middle of the night and they never went back there. And it's a historical home. And nobody's lived in there for decades. And it was almost like this protected place. And a friend of mine, she passed away. She was like, I call her a big sister of mine. She was a psychic medium. She was terribly gifted, where people from Interpol had consulted with her in the past. Other police services and organizations did to find missing people, murder investigations. And I worked a couple of cases with her where I did a psychological profile, and she did the psychic profile. And we helped cops catch a person within 24 hours or 36 hours. It was something like in that time period. I showed her a picture of this house back. She passed in 2004-ish, around there. And I remember showing her that house in 2001, I think it was. And she said, Peter, as long as you live, I don't want you setting foot on that property. She had a colleague of hers that had a radio show that actually they once did a seance where they tried to contact, and I think I'd never heard it, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the famous musician.
Yeah.
And this very gifted medium saw pictures of that house, and she said she could see what looked like teenagers from 1920-ish, 1930s, literally spirits hanging out the window. In 2001 or 2002, I was working on a project with a friend of mine that was doing an independent film, and we connected with a guy who does dowsing, and he's also a medium of some sorts. And he talked about that house, and he says he could see teenagers hanging out of the windows. That's three people that are independent that don't know each other. So fast forward into, I think it was 2012, 2013, I brought a psychic medium down there, and he's transplanted from New York City, and Stan Mello, he's on our show. Mm-hmm. I never told Stan anything about that house. I said, dude, you got 10 minutes, because we were down there for something else, filming at an old cemetery there. And he went there and he read the house, came back 10 minutes later. And Jim, he told me ad verbatim what the other three quote unquote mediums said. He goes, there was teenagers that were once in that house. One killed another one and then committed suicide. That's what he claimed. Okay. So fast forward, we filmed the profilers for another site. We go by this house that one night. I kept my word to this day. I have not set foot on that property. They went, Michelle DeRoche, she had, I think it was an obelisk, and she had some ghost device or spirit device where she could actually see, it was a heat sensor, heat image, thermal imaging. The house is completely derelict. There's no furniture. There's nothing in here, and this thing is boarded up. So they call me. I said, I'm going to wait in my car, and I waited in the car with Wayne Mel, who's part of the show. He didn't want to go. He just said he had a bad feeling. So they went on the sidewalk. They did not go on the property out of respect because it's private property. They're walking back, and they called me. They said, Pete, you got to come out and check this out. I'm watching this thing as we're walking on the sidewalk, Tim. It's walking with us from inside the house and absolutely mirroring, parallel each step we're taking, back and forth. And then Michelle pulls out the obelisk and starts to communicate with it and says, what are you? What is this? I think it said devil at one point. It definitely said evil.
Wow.
And she's done a fair bit of stuff with demonic stuff and that. And she says, yeah, it's a bad thing. It's a bad mojo there. And I wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, and especially going and poking around with that thing. How do you know that thing can't get out or latch onto you or whatever? Because when I did another series called Niagara's Most Haunted, we had gone down to film at the old gazebo that was in Stephen King's book adaptation made into the Dead Zone with Christopher Walken and Martin Sheen. We went to film there because they were going to tear it down. And I was in a coffee shop, and there was 3 women in their 40s, and they go, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Because they saw the camera stuff. And I started telling them, and they said, "You should go and see this house. This was the house I just told you about." They said, when we were in our early 20s, we wanted to test the theory. We broke into that house through the bottom window area because it was boarded up. We brought a Ouija board in there and some candles, and they said the Ouija board went up in flames on its own within 5 to 10 minutes of being in there. And they got the hell out of there.
Whoa.
So, as I say, I am a Christian, so I wholeheartedly believe in demons. I know they exist because if my Lord says they exist, then and God says they exist. He knows. He created the universe. He knows more than anything. And it's like there are certain things we don't go poke around with. We shouldn't. And I think that's another part of how far do you want to push that envelope? Because at one shoot where I watched, first of all, there was 12 of us in a room, and we heard a disembodied voice. It didn't come through the spirit box. It came, just filled the room. 12 of us heard it, plus the owners, and I was blown away. We had 3 cameras rolling. I saved it even. And then I watched something that looked like a combination of a giant white scorpion mixed with a crab go up a wall behind where Michelle and Wayne were doing the spirit box, and it disappeared into the ceiling. And it was like, whoa, that is just, and we had a guest there on the show who is an intel former military captain, that after he says, "Pete, thanks for the invite, but don't ever invite me to one of these again. That is just scary, you know what."
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to ask you this, Pete. I mean, it's, even though you can, if you try, you can segment the paranormal into, well, these are ghosts here, these are poltergeists here, this is demons here. You can put them in nice little categories and try to fool yourself into thinking it really is one big soup, right? You don't know what you're getting when you go out. Do you, much like cops will have backup if a situation gets out of control, do you have backup if a situation gets out of control? Do you have spiritual backup?
That's what, first of all, I believe spirit. I don't go and dig into that stuff. And as a Christian, I believe I'm protected because I really do plead the blood of Christ. I plead that over myself. And, biblically speaking, if you look at it, the demons knew who he was. And they literally begged him, "Leave us alone. We know who you are, Son of God," or whatever. And they flee. And I really do believe, and this is something I've always said, and I immediately plead, I will say his name or whatever, because they have to leave. That's a law. That's a spiritual law. They don't want any part of him. Mm-hmm. So I feel protected. The rest, and because, Tim, everybody has their own belief system, and some, I believe, on our team could be atheistic or agnostic. If they want to, and some of them actually chase after this stuff. They enjoy it. I can't, everybody has their own freedom and choice to pick whatever they want to do in life and how they want to proceed. And what a lot of people don't realize about our show, first of all, there's zero budget. Nobody's getting paid. We're all doing this for fun. But because there was such an interest at Comic-Cons and Paracons, we've tried to get it out there on streaming platforms. So what you're seeing is authenticity. Nothing is scripted. Nothing is faked. Because what do we have to gain from this? Nobody's getting paid. And I do most of the editing. And I'm doing it on my free time. The filming is all done on free time, which really isn't free time because it's our time. It's valuable to us. So everybody's going in, then, to answer your question to a degree, with their own belief systems and what they think. And I'll be honest, I've watched individuals join our team in the past that went in there with crystals. They're holding their crystals, and I just thought to myself under my breath, good luck with that. I don't know what the hell those crystals are going to do for you. because I don't think those crystals work too well. And I was talking to you before camera in the 1970, what they called the poltergeist case in St. Catharines, Ontario, that lasted 28 days.
Yeah.
That police were involved in and everything. And the bed was floating 2 feet off the ground, 3 adults on a couch, a couple feet off the ground, the kid on a chair off the ground. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, pull out your crystals. Let's see what those crystals are going to do there. Well, I don't see it.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that case, because that's an intriguing case, and I think that's pretty much I think you said that's still the benchmark for your career, right?
Yeah. So when I was teaching the courses in parapsychology and then even in criminal psych, because I work with a lot of cops. Cops are coming in to be, or people wanting to become cops, or cops in for promotion. So they told me years and years ago, I'd never heard of it. They were telling me about it. And then one of my best friends who retired from the police service down here says, hey, Doc, I'm going to get you these. I'll get you a copy of the files or whatever. And then I got introduced to Mike Mooney and Bob Crawford, Scotty Croft. They called him Scotty because he was from Scotland, and Mike, Irish cop. And there was another Irish cop. So in 1970, they get a call to what they thought was a domestic in St. Catharines, Canada. And they thought either the husband was beating on the wife or beating on the kids. And none of that was going on. They showed up, the cops show up, and they saw firsthand what went on. While they were there, the kid, there was 2 boys, the younger of the 2 boys was on the floor screaming. And I remember Mike Mooney saying, this is the kind of stuff you got to stop. It's waking up the neighbors. They're disrupted by it. You got to stop your kid, or we're going to do whatever we've got to do to stop this. And the mother pleaded with him to go and pick the chair off the kid. So Mike says, if it's going to shut the kid up, I'll go do it. He said, Peter, it was like that chair was magnetized to the floor. I could not budge. This wooden kitchen chair, it had the kid pinned down. And he goes, my partner came over, and 2 big cops could not pull the chair off the kid. This progressively got worse. Mike was filling out an incident report in the kitchen. There's a shelf of plates on the wall. A plate came right, literally parallel to the bridge of his nose, dropped at his feet. The younger of the 2 Irish cops ran. Well, Mike was one of the Irish cops. The other Irish cop ran out screaming, it's leprechauns, it's leprechauns. Didn't want to go in the house. Scotty Crawford stayed there for the whole 28 days and saw it through. Scott passed away probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And he was there. He saw everything. And he said, on the 28th day when I was in the bedroom with the kid, Peter, he goes, this bed started levitating off the ground. It was 1.5 feet, 2 feet off the ground, and everything in the room was flying off the walls. The only thing that didn't move was the crucifix. And at one point, it got so popular, Johnny Carson was talking about it on The Tonight Show. And they had folks, media coming down from San Diego, LA, trying to get into that house to get interviews. And they were dressing up as nuns and priests.
Oh, wow.
So I always ask, I go, well, what the hell happened, Scotty? Because I said, you saw it through. And he goes, well, on the 28th day, a priest came to the house. And then he goes, after the priest left, it all stopped. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, that's really interesting. If it's a poltergeist, that's psychokinesis. It's psychokinetic energy. If anything's going to happen, a priest ain't going to fix that. Right. That's more of a psychiatric thing or a reconditioned thinking situation. And also, a lot of times in poltergeist cases, this is happening usually in more older kids or teenagers where changes are happening in the body, so to speak, hormonal changes and all that kind of stuff. So I go, and I asked him point blank, did they do an exorcism? Is this what that was? And he just looked at me, he goes, I can't comment, I don't know. Which I just kind of thought, okay, maybe he doesn't know, or maybe he does know, but he's warned to not tell me. But it ended. And it never happened again. So what really happened after that, I don't know. Because I remember talking about this on a radio show once where I was invited on. And I'll be honest, I almost hung up and left the radio show. It was an audio show where the host started laughing at me, going, well, you believe this, you believe that. And I challenged him. I said, you know what? I'll tell you what. You come and you talk to the police service. You talk to the cops that were there. You want to come to and talk to some of these cops that are 6'2", 6'4", 250 pounds and call them, oh, you must have been imagining stuff and seeing stuff and you believe this? You must be crazy. I don't know, Tim, any cop worth their weight in gold from the municipal police level all the way up to the feds I've worked with that would sign their name to anything and say, I saw 3 adults floating on a couch. I saw a kid floating on a bed.
Yeah.
Cops they're going to say, if you went and told a cop that, they're going to go, I think you need to go see a shrink. Or I think what were you drinking? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when cops put their name to it and cops are even sheepish about talking about it, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. Or their superior officer might pull them off the road for a while. Yeah.
Actually, a police ban was put on that place. They weren't allowed to go back there.
That's incredible. As far as the priest could have done something as simple as a deliverance too, rather than an exorcism, which is just it's like exorcism light. And if it was a lower level demon, which I've heard you talk about this too, and you had referenced something that Ed Warren had said at one time. Anything over 2.5, 3 pounds is demonic.
And Michelle DeRoche, who's part of the Paranormal Profilers, she's met Lorraine. Like, I believe Michelle has been to see the museum or whatever when Lorraine was alive in that. So yeah, Michelle believes in a lot, the credibility of the whole demonic realm, as I do. But in 1970, I was barely born. So we're going back to that time period. I wouldn't know of that. But ironically, when I was a kid in elementary school, because I went to elementary Catholic school, that said priest wound up in our parish for, I believe, a year.
Okay.
Because after I did the one interview with Robert Crawford, Scotty Crawford, the Scottish cop, he named the priest. And he goes, do you know so-and-so? And I go, yes, I do. How ironic that I would have seen that priest right when I was in elementary school, and that would have probably been about 5 years after that event. But I don't know. I've never contacted that priest. But once again, I believe in the whole privacy, to respect people's privacy. And if that poor kid, who would have been now an adult, was traumatized, I'm sure he was, I wouldn't even want to know the last name. I had heard the last name from people, and friends of mine knew the last name. And I said, I don't want to know the last name, and I would never put the last name out there because some things are just horrific to a family. And if that child was traumatized at any level, which I'm sure, probably feeling would be weirded out as an adult to talk about it unless they wanted to, that's still not my business. I don't want to go poke that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for a fact that all priests can do a deliverance, but not all priests can do an exorcism.
Which is interesting because if you go to the Pentecostal side, they'll just go for it. Like, yeah. It's almost interesting where you believe it's almost like, why do I need permission?
Yeah, I know that. Isn't that weird?
Like, if I'm going to, honestly, and this is what I've always said, I was raised a Catholic. I don't consider myself a Catholic Christian. I don't even consider myself Catholic. I am a Christian. Therefore, I don't need to go to a priest. I just go to the Father. I go to the one. It's like in that movie Payback with Mel Gibson, where he's trying to get his $10,000 back. And, William Devane's in it, Chris Christopherson, James Coburn. And then, Mel Gibson keeps asking, I just want one. And they go, well, what do you mean one? He goes, the one at the top. That's the only one I want to go to and talk to.
Yeah. 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 You're absolutely right. And I believe it's even somewhere in scripture. You only need to talk to one, right? You only need the power of one. You should be able to talk directly to one.
And that's it. God is not a liar. And when I'm told in scripture, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yeah.
That's all I need, Jim. I got him.
Yeah.
It's almost like, okay, the movie My Bodyguard, where they keep Matt Dillon was in it, and the kids getting bullied, and they keep going and getting bigger bodyguards to protect them, and the bodyguards are fighting and all that stuff. And it's almost like that as kids. Well, you think that? I'm going to tell my father. Oh, my father is bigger than your father, and all this stuff. And it's like that's kind of like this whole thing with the whole protection thing when you had asked me originally. It's like, I'll just go to the Father, the creator of the entire universe. And I think he can do a pretty good job at it, where he basically kicked the forever loser out of heaven. So I think he can, basically clean Earth's floor with the forever loser.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, that's a good perspective. Definitely, Pete. As we begin to wrap up here, let me ask you this. As we get through our investigation, as we're getting to the end of our investigation, we kind of have to wrap things in a nice little bow. And I know as someone who's skeptical, when you come to a conclusion, if something is a haunting or not, what is a good indicator to you that something is not haunted?
When we don't find anything. Like, I can use the example of the Screaming Tunnel on Warner Road in Niagara Falls.
Please.
It's the most famous haunted tunnel in Canada. It's known in the United States because it was in the movie The Dead Zone, the Stephen King movie, where Christopher Walken, his character as a psychic, goes into the tunnel because there's a dead person and they're a victim. And Tom Skerritt, who plays in the movie the sheriff or whatever, brings him in there. Supposedly that tunnel had, or has, the legend is, if you go in there at midnight, bring a candle or a match, it'll get blown out because there was a girl that was murdered in that tunnel and her ghost haunts that tunnel. Or she died in the tunnel from a fire that she ran from the farmhouse in there. There's different versions of it. Now, the problem is, though, Tim, is that tunnel has only been around, I'll be generous, 100, 110 years. And reports and records are modern enough that there would be papers that said there was a death in that tunnel or a murder in that tunnel. There's none. So I brought, quote unquote, psychic mediums in there, folks with their equipment in there. I've even gone in there with MTV. I want my MTV, so to speak. The only thing that, and other film networks, and each time they've had electrical problems and technical problems, which is bizarre in itself. But I think because it's on an incline, it's on an escarpment, that could be part of it, or who knows whatever else is in their electrical. But nobody's died in that tunnel. So what are they picking up in there? Nothing. The obelisk isn't having anybody talk to them. The ghost box hasn't had anybody talk to them. And the K2 meters aren't picking anything. Now, potentially, if they are picking something, is it the same thing that's causing the electrical equipment, cameras, and that to die, which could be some sort of vortex or current or issue that's outside, that literally is tied to physics? Or as, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang would say, it's just elementary. It's just physics that's causing it to go out.
Well,
so that's how I would say it's not haunted.
You could have a mineral in the tunnel, too, that's working as a Faraday cage and or a reverse Faraday cage that's actually dampening any electrical current that's working inside the tunnel as well.
Absolutely. In 2017, I brought members of our team. We decided for the community to do a free ghost walk through there. They had the equipment, and it just turned out to be a nothing burger. So there wasn't a lot of people on this tour, but once again, expectation. If they were expecting the folks from my team to be talking to the ghost of the girl in there, they were going to be hard pressed because there's no ghost of a girl in there unless some ghost from nearby decided to go just hang out in a tunnel, a dreary tunnel that was used by farmers to move their produce underneath there. Why the hell would you want to go hang out in there and go, okay, I'm just going to wait here, hang out for midnight so I can blow out a candle? Gee, look at the feasibility of that. What sense would that make? Because those that do believe residual energy or apparitions or ghosts, the spirit version, usually haunt the places that they once lived at or they were familiar with.
Yeah.
And if that's a place that's not familiar, why go there to the most bizarre, asinine place in the middle of a tunnel and just sit there and go, gee, who's going to come out tonight and see me? And a lot of nights, nobody goes out there because a lot of the age of our population, a lot of people don't know that story anymore. And it's kind of going through the cracks because we have so many immigrants coming to our country that wouldn't even make any sense to them. And that's part of the reason I do the show, and I did it in the first place, is I'm trying to preserve the history. Because most of the places we go to, Tim, are very historical places, and I want the legacy of this history to live on. And that's the true ghosts that live on, is the history, the stories, the legends.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Well, we've got links for you, Dr. Sacco, at in the main website, peterandrewsacco.com, but we've got links to your Paraflix show. We've got links to the books. We've got plenty of places to send people to check you out, because we want people to check out all your wonderful projects that you've got out there. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a very interesting hour. That's for sure.
It's been a pleasure, Tim. Anybody listening to me, thank you. I've been retired as a professor for some time now, so when I get to do these shows, it's fun. Normally, they all happen around Halloween, especially with the new film that I've got out at film festivals, so I get to do it again around that time again, but this is kind of like a real treat to come on your show, Tim.
In the name of the film, it's in film festivals right now?
Niagara's 13 Ghosts, which looks at 13 of the most haunted places. One of them is that tunnel, but there's even a real haunted tunnel not too far from here. And then the 3 superstitions that go on here. And then we have a recreation of that poltergeist case from 1970. That's the longest part of that film that we go through it from start to finish and explain it.
Very interesting. All right. Dr. Peter Sacco, appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're on the weekend. That means a couple of different things. One, want you to check out darknessradioshow.com and the shop. That supports the show here. So please check out the True Crime Tuesday swag and the Darkness Radio swag that's there. Would like you to do that. 2, make sure you've got your Darkness Radio Apple app updated. And if you don't have it at all, make sure you download it. Take Darkness Radio with you wherever you are. And there's also other programming content on there as well. You get some bonus programming content on there. Make sure you have that on your Apple device. 3, if you're listening to this show and you're not watching it, you can do that by going to the Darkness Radio YouTube page, the original Darkness Radio on YouTube, or just simply go to darknessradioshow.com. You can just click on the show you're interested in. You'll see the video and the audio live in that one space. So there you go. And 4, we're upon the weekend, and those summer weekends are getting shorter and shorter. We've got fewer of them remaining, especially here in the Minneapolis area. I want you to remember that even though you're probably having fun at the cabin, or you're going to fairs, local county fairs, or wherever you're going, maybe you're enjoying a ball game or whatever you're doing, remember to take someone who is either elderly or a disabled vet with you, and make sure you're a light in someone's darkness this weekend. Make sure you make somebody's weekend with you. Just a message from your friends here at Darkness Radio. For Mally Fox, for Jessica Freeberg, for Travis Thorpe, and for Beer City Bruiser, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for continuing to listen and watch the best in paranormal podcasting. You've been tuned into Darkness Radio.